Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel, Thrive, Don't Survive. Today we have a special guest here. Her name is Karen Yates. Please, Karen, introduce yourself.
Hi, Veronica. Thank you so much for having me. So, introduce myself. Wow, where do I start? I guess the best thing would be to say is that I am an inspirational speaker and transformational coach focused on really helping people overcome the challenges that pop up when we want to make changes in our lives, realizing that our brains are actually wired to keep us stuck where we are.
Mm,
So, identifying what is actually going on and then how to overcome that so you can actually embrace the life that you want to have, but somehow seem to never be able to get there because you just feel stuck where you're at.
I love that. That is so interesting. So I read that you kind of went through that. I kind of went through that as well. So tell us a little more about your story and how you got there and what inspired you to be a transformational coach.
Sure. So this is going back a few years now, but after 20 years of marriage, my husband and I found ourselves in a really, really tough place, both in our relationship and financially. Working as a chemist, I would have thought that financially things would be like smooth sailing, but going through three job losses, moves across the country, all of that put us in a really, really bad spot
Hmm.
that impacted our relationship, along with having two children, life going on, just seeming to get burdened down with the everyday life. The
Hmm.
spark that we had in our marriage, it was kind of dampened down really, really low. And we found ourselves in a really, really terrible spot. The point to where something had to change. We were either going to take the easy route and separate, or we needed to make some major changes to make our relationship work. We looked at each other and said, you know what? There is still love. It's down there, it's buried a little deep, it's been covered up with a lot of yuck, but it's still there. And we want to try to reignite that to continue our marriage. Well, you look at each other and you're like, okay, what now? So we did the only thing we knew how to do at that point, which was just to talk to each other. Those really deep, heart-wrenching, emotional discussions. What's going wrong? What things need to change? How can we get back to where we're both happy with this relationship? So we spend lots and lots of time talking. And through this, we really start to realize that, well, I started to realize, I think my husband already knew, that when I took a deep look at my life, I wasn't happy with where I was at.
Right.
Not just with our relationship, not just with money, but just in general. I mean, here it is. We were each given this like one beautiful opportunity to live. And I'm kind of slogging through life, just day after day, doing the same things and not really feeling a spark for life anymore.
Mm.
Wow, that kind of hits hard. That's like, wait, I'm 20 years into my marriage, 20 years into a career. And what am I doing? I'm not spending any time with my kids. I'm not having this amazing relationship with my husband that I want to have. Life is passing me by. So we went a little deeper. How do we fix this? And we both realized that the only thing that we felt would really improve our relationship was spending more time together.
Okay.
But how do you do that when you both have jobs, you're both working outside the home, you've got kids. So every day, you're coming home from work, you're tired, you're making dinner, you're having time with the kids, you're helping with homework, you're cleaning up, you're getting them ready for bed, and you're sitting down and you're spending, an hour watching YouTube or Netflix or something. And then you go to bed and you do it all over again.
Not connecting.
Not connecting and not having that time, right? Even if we said, okay, you know what, we're going to take that hour that we have at the end of the night when we're both tired, when neither one of us is feeling like, our best selves and we're going to spend it with each other, okay, that's good, but it's not getting us where we really want to be.
Right.
So we started asking, well, there's limits there, right? Working as a chemist, I didn't have flexibility. I couldn't say, you know what? I just want to work 30 hours a week. Just pay me a little less and I'll work 30 hours. I mean, reality was I wasn't working 40 hours. I was working 50 plus hours a week. The flexibility wasn't there. I couldn't say, you know what, let me do an alternative schedule. I would just want to work 4 days a week
Hmm.
or whatever. It wasn't there. The opportunity wasn't there. So we started diving deeper. Well, if you can't do that, what can you do? Well, let's take everything, all those limiting beliefs off the table and say, what can you do? And what came out of it eventually was leaving the normal life that we've been following, this kind of programmed path, as I like to call it, and doing something completely different.
Nice.
For us, that turned out to be selling, getting rid of, donating nearly everything we owned, giving up the lease on our house, selling our vehicle, and buying one-way tickets to Bali and starting to travel full time as a family of four.
Wow. That is very bold, very brave.
It was at the time, I didn't really see it as being so courageous.
Okay.
I was like, this sounds exciting. I'm excited about life. I'm excited about doing this. Wow, this feels so good after having realized that I was just going through the motions every day. So feeling that enthusiasm, that excitement for life, I was like, okay, yeah, there's hurdles, but we're just gonna jump over them one at a time and just keep going and we're gonna move forward and we're gonna do this. Looking back, I realized that wow, there there was a lot of courage involved in doing that. There was a lot of boldness to say, you know what? I'm gonna give up my career of 20 years as a chemist. I'm gonna go do something that most of our family, many of our friends thought was completely crazy.
Yes, I can feel that. I did that twice in my life. So it doesn't feel courageous in the moment. It feels like what you need to do. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So how did that end up going? What job did you get? How did you end up making it sustainable?
Sure, the great questions. So we spent about, well, less than a year between deciding when we were going to do this until we left. In that time, we got really, really good about looking at our finances and saying, okay, where can we save money? So we could save up a pot. By the time we left, even though our finances had been like literally terrible when we started this, we had a year's worth of living expenses saved up through very frugal, intentional decision making. That started, one of the other big questions was how do we get income? Because chemistry, not really something you're going to do on the road. So we said, you know what we really, really want is the entrepreneurial route. So we started that, had a plan B for backup in case that didn't work. So we started marketing together, nothing we had done before, but we said, you know what, look, this is a viable route. We were doing okay with that until COVID hit. Unfortunately, our business didn't make the pivot with COVID. And we
Oh,
said, okay, we're going to flex. So we're going to go to plan B, which was to teach English online. So we both taught English to Chinese students, which worked really, really well for
nice.
the time being, especially during COVID. They were shut down. We happened to be in Vietnam, so we were 1 hour time difference. It worked out really well. We could have taught English all day, every day until we were like drained. It got us through the time being. Then some legislation in China changed, made that not so feasible anymore to really have a reasonable income. I ended
Mm,
up finding a remote job, one that I could do while traveling. And that has sustained us and then really got us to this point where it's like, okay, you know what? I'm at a point now where I really need to share this inspiration, this message to really encourage others to go out there and embrace life because I know that I was stuck in this same routine over and over and over. And I know there's so many other people out there. And every time I tell the story, I get people telling me, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. You went after your dreams, you did this. And I'm like, wait, wait, wait. My story is not about me anymore. It's about encouraging others to look at their own lives and say, what is it that you want out of life? What is it that your dream is? And how do you make that happen? You don't have to be stuck. So that's where we're at today. 5 years later, we started traveling back in 2019. 5 years later, we're still on the road. We still love it. And kids have grown. They're now 17 and 12. So, all in all, we are very happy. We don't really have plans to settle down. We continue to do this and see beautiful places, meet incredible people, experience amazing cultures. And it's been a phenomenal trip.
I love that. That's such a powerful, inspiring story. And it's so odd for a chemist. So you're all like science-based to go to the route of coaching and inspiring and doing all these things that are not science-based, like your limiting beliefs. That's not science-based. Like people don't tell you, like, I can see that you have, I can prove to you, but you can with experience, right? But not with like numbers and names and little codes like chemists do, right?
Absolutely. That was a big shift for me. That had
Mhm.
been my whole focus from I don't- middle school, even. I loved science, gravitated towards math and science, and then to just kind of put those to the side and say, you know what, I'm going to do something that lights me up. And while I had enjoyed my career, I realized that there was more to life, that there was more than just existing.
Mm, exactly. That is very, very true. And how do you deal with like not sleeping in your bed and like, traveling and having all the bags here and there with like four people and food? That would be a big one for me. I have done those trips like 6 months and stuff like that. And it's like I'm intolerant to so many food. I'm like gluten-free, lactose-free, da da da. And like there are places where that doesn't exist. And so like I gained all this weight and I wasn't feeling great afterwards. So how do you deal with like all the moving parts that is like being a nomad, I guess?
Sure, there's a lot. There's a lot to those questions there. First and foremost, we travel slow. That
Okay.
was something we needed to do. We knew that going in, that we did not want to be one of those like, oh my gosh, we're going to see 50 countries in 2 years and, just go, 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 go. We said, no, we want to stay and get involved in the community, the culture as much as we can. So we try to stay as long as the visa will allow us in any given country. So
Okay.
most of the time, that's about 3 months. It depends. It varies. And in that 3 months, we might be in one or two locations in that country. So very slow travel allows us to not be moving all the time. We're definitely not sleeping in our own bed. We've gotten very, very accepting of hard beds, soft beds, fluffy pillows, flat pillows, you name it, we can sleep on it. Last night happened to be an airport floor
Oh my goodness.
because that's how things work out sometimes. And we've just learned, I think I'm just much more accepting, much more adaptable than I
Mm,
ever was before.
yes. You can change your attitude. Like, okay, I'm gonna not like to not be in my bed, or like, it's okay. It's the experience.
Right. And with the food, actually 2.5 years ago, we all decided as a family to go vegan.
Okay, nice.
Not strict, we're not, adamant about it, but we really try our best not to eat meat, dairy, fish, any of that, which while traveling, especially while actively traveling, so airport food, for instance, can be very, very challenging
Yes.
to meet that. But while we're slow traveling, it's usually not so bad. We can go to the grocery store and we can figure out what we can eat, what's available. And it varies from location to location. One of my favorite moments is going to a small grocery store on the Galapagos Islands and my children being so excited because they're like, look, mom, they have tofu. Look, mom, garbanzo beans. And it was just such a proud moment. They're not picking out the Pringles or the Doritos.
That's
They're
funny.
picking out, the tofu, and they're excited about that. It's like, oh, you know what? I'm going to give myself a pat on the back for that one and say, yeah, it's good. But definitely it can be challenging. And there are times where it's like, thankfully, we're not allergic or intolerant to meat, although our stomachs at this point don't really appreciate it terribly much. So push comes to shove, if you've got to have a little bit of meat sauce on your pasta, we deal with it and move on. But I can definitely see with gluten or dairy intolerances, those can be really, really challenging
Yeah.
while traveling for sure.
Especially in like more third world countries where, I don't know, we went to Colombia and Ecuador and all that, and it was like no options at all. They would put that thing, but it's also different. It's a different gluten and it's a different way they do everything. So I feel like in America it's worse than everywhere else in my experience. But yeah, that's definitely hard. Like I would usually bring stuff because here you do, well, it's worse, but you also have a lot of alternatives. So you have all the bread that's like gluten-free. You have like so many, pastas of garbanzo beans and like stuff like that. So I would bring stuff with me, but that doesn't last the whole time, right?
It'd be an awful lot of food for 6 months to be carrying with you.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And how do your kids deal with moving so much, like with making friends and school and all that?
Sure. So they both do school online. Our 17-year-old has pretty much transitioned out of formalized education at this point. It was exciting. We started when he was 12 and a half, and he had a passion for computer programming. He did
Nice.
not get that from either my husband or I. So he, because of our traveling, though, he was able to really embrace his journey into computer programming. So he's completely self-taught. He started taking a Harvard course,
Wow.
a computer science Harvard course when he was 13, 12. I think he started it before he turned 13.
Mm.
Didn't complete it the first time. We started him at it again 6 months later, and he worked through the entire Harvard computer science course as a 13-year-old.
Wow.
So he's completely self-taught, but he was able to really spend the time dedicated to learning that. And we say, you know what, if he'd been in a traditional school, yes, he could have had computer science courses, but I don't know if you've ever taken them. They're really kind of, how shall I say, dumbed down.
Yeah.
And so he wouldn't have had the time. He wouldn't have had that freedom to actually really dive in, learn, and be in the same place where he is now. So at
Mm.
17, he's pretty much done with schooling and looking, okay, what can I do to make money? He would have the opportunity to go to college if he wanted to. He's chosen that that's really not the route he wants to take at this point in time. There's a lot of options for what he's interested in that don't require a college degree. So he's exploring that. And my husband and I had to change really our mindset because we were both convinced, when he was born, when both of our kids were born, well, they're going to go to college. That's the
Mhm.
natural progression, right? That's the programming path. But given that we started on this journey, we said, you know what? There's a lot of other opportunities out there, a lot of different ways. And what is it that we really want for both of our children? And that's to be able to be self-sufficient,
Right.
to earn their income without relying on us or anyone else and be happy. And if that means you can do that without going to spending 4 years of your life or more ending up in debt, we're okay with that.
Yeah, I love that. That's kind of like a limiting belief too, where, We had so much pressure of like, if you don't do, my parents are both PhDs. And it's like, if you don't go to college, you're not going to be anybody and nobody's going to hire you. And that's still true in their defense well, I'm Venezuelan, right? In those countries. Like people just, they do look at that. And if you don't have it, then they won't hire you in some stuff, right? In some careers. But I love that like everything the world is moving out of that and it's like okay, even like I studied in the French system and I went and I studied college in France and they have done that for a long time. Like if you're a kid and you're in high school and you don't like school and you're not good at school, you can choose like a technical degree of like, okay, I want to be a janitor, I want to be a cleaner, I want to be an artist, I want to be a computer science person, like, and then with that you can do whatever you want afterwards. Like either you go to college or you just keep your path with it, and that's so, I don't know, modern and good for you because that pressure and those, I feel like I didn't learn anything in college. I learned working and I studied film, right? So it's like it's a hard thing to teach. Like you can learn some things, but you basically learn more with experience, and it's not that you know, important to have a degree in film to be a filmmaker. Um,
Sure.
so yeah, very impressive that you guys went for that and let him or them do what they wanted to do. And just, it's not that you do learn things and it is good, but it's not for everyone. You can be successful as a dropout or not even going, or, it's not destiny, like it doesn't define you.
Right. It is not a prerequisite to success.
Exactly.
And, my husband asked this before we started traveling. Just kind of, we were asking each other a lot of questions. Well, what about this? What about that? This was a huge change for us. And it wasn't something that we dove into lightly. We definitely dove into all of those challenges. But rather than saying, no, we can't do this, we said, okay, well, what would this look like? What does Christmas, what do the holidays look like if we're not spending them with one of our families or in Kansas where we were living at the time? What does Christmas look like? And it's one of the most beautiful things, honestly, to get to choose what your holidays look like, because then you can really focus on what's important to you.
Yeah.
So my husband had actually asked me, what do you think if our kids decided not to go to college? And I sat back and I paused and I said, it's a really good question because my innate instinct is no, they have to go to college. But then stopping and assessing it, it's like, well, what do I really want for them? I really want them to be happy and
Mhm.
self-sufficient. And that does not require a degree if that's not the path that they choose. Clearly, if you want to be a chemist, you better go and get a degree.
Yeah.
But as you said, a filmmaker, is it really necessary? I'd say not. I agree with you. I think it's not the only route to get there.
Hmm.
So having those questions asked and really delving in and being willing to give up these beliefs, these very long held beliefs, was important for me to really make the transition.
Yeah, I love that. And that's like the uncomfortable thing to do, but it like frees you in a way because then you have so many opportunities. And I love that you guys have such a communication where you prepare everything. I feel like I need to work on that with my partner too, where it's like talk about everything, prepare everything. And I don't know, sometimes it's like, okay, you can be over prepared, but I'm a producer, so I'm like, I like to over prepare and then, have plan A, plan B, da da da. And then, it's a good way to just succeed at whatever you want to do. And then my partner is more like, go with the flow, it just don't prepare anything. It just goes out of the house and there's like absolutely nothing like so yeah, I'm inspired.
It can work both ways. I think what was important for us was to have those conversations before we left
Hmm.
so that neither one of us was holding on to something that would really make us not feel good about making that decision.
Mm.
Right. So one of the things for us was extended family. You know, to be very open, neither of our families was excited about us doing this,
Oh.
or still are for that matter, to be very frank. So what's really the important thing for the grandparents? Well, they want to be able to see their grandkids
Right.
and spend time with them. Well, we looked at it. We were living in Kansas. My family was in Michigan. My husband's family was in Las Vegas. We didn't see them frequently.
Right.
So we're like, okay, let's be real here. We see one or both of them once or twice a year in person. So I said, well, okay, can we replicate that? Can we see them once or twice a year? And initially, when we left, we said, okay, we'll be back once a year. Well, COVID hit, and that kind of took that out of the plan really quick. But we said, you know what? There's Zoom calls, there's FaceTime, there's all these other ways that they can still interact while not being face to face. And we said, that's really the important thing. We want the grandparents to know our children and vice versa. But it doesn't mean that we have to be stuck in Kansas where we're not seeing them anyways
Right.
in order to accomplish that.
Makes sense. That's very, very smart. I love that. And so tell us a little more about your program and how you help people, um, you know, be better and get unstuck, um, inspired by your story, of course.
Right. So this really goes back, take us back a little bit. I had a really bad motor scooter accident while we were in Vietnam during COVID. My son was on the back of the scooter with me. I ended up wiping out the bike completely. My fault, skidded on some sand. He ended up with a broken wrist. I ended up unconscious,
Wow.
um, head wound, blood filling the cracks of the sidewalk
Wow.
on this really deserted road in Vietnam. I don't remember any of it.
Wow.
But we ended up very, very lucky. Some passersby stopped. They called an ambulance. They called the scooter company. They helped in any way they could. We spent one night in the hospital, which was just incredible, and neither one of us has any lasting problems. But what happened, about 2 days later, we're walking around town, and I am looking like I'm covered in road rash. I'm looking pretty rough. You know, I've got stitches in my head, I've got scrapes and bruises all over. But I'm walking around and I'm feeling, wow, I'm so happy to not be more seriously injured. This was a
Mhm.
bad accident. It really could have gone much worse.
Right.
And I just had this overwhelming sense that I wasn't doing enough, that being a wife, being a mother, traveling around wasn't enough. I needed to do more. And so I like to say this was the universe talking to me. Some people might say, you know, it's a message from God. It's whatever your own belief is. But there was just this message that came into me and said, you need to do more. You need to inspire people. And I sat and I'm like thinking about this. And then it comes to me, it's like, well, you know, you can do that through a blog. You can do that through sharing on social media. And it's like, no, that's not enough. So then it's like, you need to get in front of people. And that hit me kind of hard because I had a lifelong fear of public speaking.
Oh, me too.
So you're telling me, universe, that I need to get up on a stage and speak to people. Oh, heart start, oh, whoa, that's really scary. So it took me some time to really work through that mentally to say, you know what? I can do this. I can get over that fear. I can stand up there and I can really share my story, share my message, and get it out there for so many more people to hear. Because that's really what I'm about now, is really encouraging others. Long story short, a couple years later, it's like, okay, we're ready to do this. What is really my message? Because it's not my story. As I said before, it's not about me. It's about how do I encourage others? So from that, I started thinking, okay, why did we succeed in making this dramatic change in our life when so many other people don't? They have this dream and they say, okay, well, maybe later, 5 years down the road, or maybe when the kids are out of school, or after this or after that. And every time I hear that, I cringe inside because there is no guarantee for tomorrow. We don't know how long we have here. We don't know what tomorrow will bring, what next week, next month, next year. There is no guarantee. And I'm like, no. there's something we can do here. So
Right.
really going back on my basis of neurochemistry, a lot of my pharmaceutical research work was done on brain science. So going back on that, I really started to assess, what did we do to be able to make this major transformation in our life? And how can I relate that to what's going on in the brain so that I can really encourage others to overcome those hurdles? What came out was a 4-step, literally acronym STEP process that really encourages, through information and understanding, people to really overcome the problems that they face when wanting to make a change.
Mm.
So, walking through it, starting with S, S stands for sparking the possibilities. So many of us really get stuck in that everyday routine, right? They are existing rather than thriving. And the biggest thing that needs to start is to allow those possibilities to really enter the brain, to be a real option. So for me, it really started when my husband just threw out randomly, what would you think of moving to Thailand? There's a background story there. But first thing, it was like, wow, hit me with like a, wow, that's really, really scary. So I sat and thought about it for a minute, 5 minutes, I don't know, it seemed like forever. And I just looked at him and I said, to be honest, it scares the heck out of me. And he's like, okay. And he was fine with that. But what happened the next day is he had put that little seed in my head. And the next day, rather than saying, no, that's crazy, I would never do that, I started thinking about it. Well, what would life be like if I did that? What would our relationship look like if we did this? Wow, how would the kids benefit if we did this? And all these things started entering my head as positives. And this started to really spark the excitement. And that's really where I say the change started, was that day at work, which was not my most productive day at work, I have to say. But all these options, all these opportunities to really hitting me as like, wow, that would be incredible. And then connecting with that emotion, because that excitement, that enthusiasm really pushed through a lot of the hurdles. Because, oh my gosh, where are we? Like, my husband and I are nearly divorced here. We have no money. The kids are in school. I need a job. There's a list a mile long of reasons why we can't do this.
Right.
But allowing that opportunity to come in and say, wow, that would be amazing. And then allowing that to sit and feel and just like, oh man, embrace that enthusiasm. That is where so many people don't, right? They might have this dream, but it's some far off point in the future. It's not now. It
Yeah.
can't be now because there's all this list. But what if you allow that to come in and say, what if? What if this were to happen? How would that feel? And really sit with that and allow it to blossom in your head. And that's really the crucial first step in the process is figuring out what it is that you really want and allowing your brain to just push off those negatives, push off all those hurdles, and just feel it.
Nice.
Okay, that's the S. The T is for take small actions.
Nice.
Our
Love
brains are programmed to embrace habits.
it. Mm-hmm.
The brain is actually the biggest energy sucker organ in our entire body. And so when we go back to caveman days, we think, okay, how did the brain overcome this? Well, it developed habits, these really like channels actually that get developed in the brain that allow the brain to spend way less energy. And so in caveman days, this was important because when there's a fight or flight situation, now the brain has the energy that it needs to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the brain, while it has developed over time, we are no longer cavemen. There's still all of this history in there, and that's still there. So these habits allow us to really spend less energy. And a great example I like to use is when you were first learning to drive. If you think about that, you're in driver's ed, you're thinking about, okay, the turn signal goes which way, left, up or down when I'm turning. How hard do I need to press on the brake in order to stop before I hit the stop sign? Before I get to the stop sign, how fast am I going? What's going on around me? And your brain is going like a mile a minute to try to take in all of this information.
Right.
Once you've been driving for, a few months, a few years, a decade, you can actually find that your brain just kind of turns off while you're driving.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you're not being safe. It means that it's all a habit in your head. And
Mm-hmm.
so you can literally be thinking about something completely different and still driving very safely down the road. So that's the habit that our brains use. But to get out of those ruts, to get out of those pathways, we have to do something different. And
Right.
that takes some energy. That
Mm.
takes a concerted effort to say, you know what? I'm going to do something different today. And maybe that something different is simply not sitting down to watch Netflix after dinner. I'm going to go take a walk instead. I'm going to pick up a book. I'm going to have a discussion with my partner. Whatever it is, doing something different. And when you practice doing that time and time again, the brain starts to realize that, hey, you know what? I'm not a caveman. I don't need to conserve all of this energy for the brain. We can do different things, and that's
Mm.
okay. And now you start to be in charge of your brain and what you are doing, as opposed to just allowing your brain to direct you by habit.
I love that. That's so interesting. I know all of this, but I don't know like the science behind the brain, like the um, how do you call that?
Neuroscience.
Neuroscience. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know a little bit about it, but it's very interesting.
Sure. So, look at my stories. Like, we didn't go from deciding we were going to do this to packing up and leaving the next day. There were so many steps along the way, so many
Mm.
small actions that basically rewired our brains a little bit to say, you know what, different is good. And we're going to embrace that. But it took some time. It
Mm.
took a lot of time to really say, you know what, this is good. And to be comfortable doing that. Because initially, doing things that are uncomfortable
Yes.
or doing things that are different is very uncomfortable.
Yes. I was gonna say what when you talked about your fear of public speaking, it's the same. I feel like in my coaching practice, I always say whatever you're more resistant to, whatever you're more fearful to do, that's exactly the path that you need to take. But because it's fearful for a reason, like it's you need to go over that discomfort because that's your path and you need to do it with fear at first. And then it will become like your second nature and your passion and your purpose, etc.
Right, very much so. So STE is one of the ones that I really didn't anticipate in our process. So E stands for evade the herd of negativity. By
Nice.
herd of negativity, I mean the people that are closest to you, your
Hmm.
family, your friends, your coworkers. They don't always support you in whatever your decision is, whether it's to drink less, to change up your diet, to travel the world. They are not always there to support you. In fact,
Hmm.
many of them will try to deter you, not because they don't want you to be happy, not because they don't want you to succeed, but because going back to the brain, there is safety in
Yeah,
what we know.
it makes them uncomfortable.
Absolutely. And so we know that right here, right now, we're safe, right? And our friends, our family is safe because they're doing what is normal, what we're used to. And when one person breaks free of that norm and does something different, this can be a fearful thing for the entire group, however big that group might be. And it
Right.
really makes them question their own choices in life. And
Exactly.
that goes back to the S, sparking the opportunities. A lot of people don't really want to question their own life.
Hmm.
They want to be happy living their status quo, their norm. And so
Right.
when you decide to do something different, this can be very threatening.
Hmm.
So understanding that is one thing, dealing with it is another.
Yeah.
Because for me, this hit when we got to Bali. Nearly, the first week of our international travels. And I realized that my family didn't want to know what was going on in my life anymore. And
Wow.
wow, did that hit hard.
Yeah, of
Like we're talking tears, we're talking just overwhelming hurt
course.
because this is my family and they don't care what's going on in my life anymore. So there were a couple of things that got us through this. The first was we didn't share with anyone except our children, what we were going to do until we were very, very committed to doing it. So
Mm.
it didn't matter. No one was going to tell us, we weren't telling our parents 8 months in advance that, hey, we're thinking about doing this, and then letting them talk us out of it, letting
Right.
them discourage us. We
Mm.
waited until 2, 3 months before we're leaving and saying, okay, this is what we're doing. And we were adamant. This is what we are doing. And you can embrace it and you can go along with it, or you can be upset about it, but you're not going to talk me out of it.
Right. You take the power away from their opinion and their say. Yeah. That's,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And the second thing we did was our very first stopping point in Bali was actually to meet a group of families that travel.
nice.
And these people became our support group, our tribe, if you would. So I reached out to them and I said, hey, I'm going through this. And the outpouring of love from these people that we had just literally met was incredible. And so while my family was giving all this negativity to me in not wanting to know what was going on in my life, these new people were just outpouring the love and saying, this is unfortunately what happens a lot, and we're here for you. So, really, for anyone looking to make a change, it's really important that they find someone or a group of people who is there to support them through those tough times.
Yeah.
When whoever it is giving that negativity, whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's coworkers, whoever it is, it could
Mhm.
even be their partner that isn't on board with the change that they want to make. It's really, really important to have someone that you know is in your corner,
Yeah,
that is there and isn't questioning why you're doing this.
exactly. I love that. Are those the four steps?
That's three. So
Okay.
sparking the opportunities, taking small steps, evading the herd of negativity. And the P is practice making everything positive. And I do, everybody talks about, oh, be positive, have a positive attitude. This is really about making literally everything in your life positive. So I look at that accident that I had with my son, and while I wish it had never happened, I wish my son had not ended up with a broken arm, that I didn't have a concussion, all of that. I look at that and I don't focus on all the negatives that happened.
Hmm.
Instead, I focus on the people that stopped,
Right.
the nurses and doctors that cared for us, the amazing people that helped my husband communicate with the hospital. We're in Vietnam. We speak no Vietnamese. He needed somebody to help understand the situation, understand the process. All of these people came out and just were so amazing. And that's what I focus on. And that gives me this outlook that to the point where I never thought of, oh my gosh, we just had this incredible accident. I'm in pain. We need to go home. It never entered my mind because I'm already focused on what good came out of it,
Hmm.
what positive I can find. And by changing that, we're really changing our brain's purpose here.
Yeah.
Our brain will focus on what it is we tell it to. And most of the time, it's focused on keeping us safe, right?
Mhm.
So it's going to say, no, you can't do that because we don't know that that's safe. But when you start to embrace all this positivity, what happens is we change our brain from problem seeking, which is what our brain does to keep us safe, right?
Right.
Seeks out the problems. This is what could happen. This is dangerous. Don't do that. And instead, we say, okay, now let's focus on the positive. And now we start to find solutions to any of those problems that get identified. And that changes one, your outlook, but two, your opportunities.
Yeah.
Because when you're focused on all of the negative or all the things that you can't do or all the hurdles that are in your way, you don't see the opportunities. They're not
Mhm.
there. They actually are there, but they're hidden from you. And so by changing that mindset very, very dramatically, very, very intentionally, now things really start to progress and you can really start to tackle those things that are real and are hurdles to preventing you from doing what you want, but are not insurmountable.
Right. Yes, I call that gratefulness because I feel like you have to go through the lows too and like feel what you need to feel. So there's like so many people saying like, well, if you do everything positive, then you're shutting off your negative feelings, which you should hear, which we don't have to do it that extreme, but I understand what you're saying, which is basically just and that's the part of the neuroplasticity that I do understand. That's like if you're pregnant, your brain is going to see everything pregnant. So if you think about negative things, you're going to be negative all day because that's what your brain is going to focus on. And you don't realize that. But when you change that, and that happened to me with my certification to become a coach, and I just did it. And like from the night to the morning, my life changed just by being grateful and focusing on the positive, which is not something that I knew was possible. I didn't understand it. And in my family, it's the opposite. It's like everything happens to us. And then everything does happen. If you're in the airport, you lose the suitcases, the flight is gonna be canceled. It's always to my family. And I'm the one that changed that for myself, not for they still do that. So that is so, so powerful to just switch that and just be grateful. I practice it every night. Like I recite the things that I'm grateful for. And then the next day, I try to, and that's for me, it's changing the victim mindset to the protagonist. So instead of like, oh, why did that happen to me? It's like, oh, that happened for me. And what am I going to do with it? What did I have to learn from that low? Okay, yes, I can feel it for a while, but not dwell on the bad feeling, which is exactly what you said. And I love that. That's so powerful. And it gets you so like to the opposite of where you were and positive and success and thriving. So yeah, I love
Absolutely.
that. So to finish here, what would you say that is like the biggest thing for people to go from surviving to thriving.
There's a lot that can happen.
Yeah.
I think that one that most people really need to start with is that sparking the opportunity within the brain. Allow those dreams to come in because let's face it, most of us get told not to dream, right?
Hmm.
You go into even as a child, right? You get told, oh, you get what you get, and you don't throw a fit, or be happy with what you have.
Yes.
All of these things, right? We're told not to dream, and that doesn't change as we age. You know, you go into the education system, and what are you told? Do this, you know, follow this path. And so many of us forget that there are options out there.
Yeah.
And so really allowing that to come in and be a part of us, actively encourage that dreaming time. So, if I may, just a little plug, what I have on my website for everyone listening, it's inspiremydreams.com. It's very simple, one word, inspire my dreams. You can go in and just enter in your dream. You don't have to share an email, anything. It's literally just taking that little action to say, you know what, this is my dream. This is what I want. Putting it into words and just sharing it with the universe and putting it out there. It's really that powerful first step to
Hmm.
saying, you know what, this is life now, but this is how I want it to be. And it doesn't have to be traveling the world. It doesn't have to be anything crazy major, but just saying, you know what, this is really what I would like. And sparking that and allowing things to happen from that, I really think that's a crucial first step that so many people deny.
Hmm. Yes, I love that. I had that experience too, where I went into a coaching class and then they were like, "What do you really dream of?" Like, and I was like, "I don't allow myself to dream." And now I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I want the house with, the pool and a family, and I want to be wealthy and comfortable and by serving people." And before it was like, that is it's bad to be ambitious. You shouldn't want all these good things. Luxury is bad and this is bad. And I'm like, why? I've been an immigrant for half of my life. I want to settle down. I want to stop being a nomad. Actually, the opposite. I traveled so much for the first half, and now I'm like, okay, I want to stay put. I want to be at a place where I love, like the beach. And then I moved to Florida and I have that the whole year, kind of like my home country. And so yeah, it is possible to get, and nobody's gonna judge you. And if they do, it doesn't matter because you know what's real inside of you and it doesn't change anything.
Absolutely.
I love that. Well,
Absolutely.
thank you so much for being here and sharing your amazing, inspiring, courageous story and your program. And I'm gonna put all her handles in the comments and in the descriptions. And yeah, ask us questions, like, and follow us. If you have any comments or anything, we'll be answering. Thank you.